Content warning. This following contains strong language. It's a little spicy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Korua ko o ngutu kome kome, you and your moaning lips.
Oh, tēnei te bro.
Kawa e?
Kawa nā.
Anei tō te tiriti.
Orokate is a podcast by the Hori and the Guru. Toitu te porokate, toitu te reo Māori.
Nau mai whānau ki te rohe pōtaia nā te raukaua, ko Hori toku ingoa, anei te porokate, toi tū te porokate. Welcome. It's beautiful to have us all here again.
Ai, ko tō tātou manuhiri I te rānei, he kairanga hau, he kaiako mō ngā kaupapa maha I te ao Māori o tira mō te Treaty of Waitangi ko Veronica Tawhai. Nau mai whanaunga.
Tēnā tātou. Ai, uri tēnei o Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Ui Pohatu, tihei mauri ora.
Che, kia ora, Auntie V.
Auntie V with the T on te tiriti.
It's great to have tea with you. Koka tiriti. But just to kind of enter us into this, we're talking all on te tiriti today.
Nice.
So if you were just to simplify it for people like myself, Article 1, 2, 3, 4, as fast and as simple as you could do it.
It's fast.
No, well, you could take a little bit of time. But if you were to simplify it for our listeners, how would you do that?
Okay,
You could
very
do
good
that right now.
whānau. So the way to understand our articles is what they call provisions, or what is actually written into our te tiriti text. So Article 1 is kāwanatanga. That was basically the mechanism by which we, as Māori, were going to allow Britain to be able to control their own subjects. If it was going to have anything to do with Māori, it's that we had a local liaison that we could go to. They were going to have a role with regards to promoting Māori trade, but with regards to law and order, their job was over British subjects only. Article 2, tino rangatiratanga, we all know what that means. That's the promise that Māori life was going to continue as is, with ourselves, as the absolute sovereigns, absolutely practicing and exercising our independence over our lives, with our lands, with our taonga, our resources, etc. Article 3, ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi. So that is then the promise that we would have access, be able to participate, or had the option to then be able to delve anything into our Pākehā that we wish to get into, primarily at that time being trade, my brother.
Right.
Trade. And that was the way in which Britain really had pitched it to us, was with regards to all the further opportunities we'd have with regards to trade development, the types of resources that we would have access to, etc. Yeah, and then Article 4, two provisions on Article 4 really, ngā whakapono katoa, so all the faiths. This is how Article 4 is then relevant to all New Zealanders. Is that it's not something that's just for Māori or just for the British Crown. Ngā whakapono katoa, all the faiths will have a place here. And then the second provision of Article 4, te ritinga Māori. And that is where it's specifically acknowledged that Māori spiritual practices, our customs, our values would be something that is always given a space to live.
Sounds pretty
Sorry,
straightforward.
that wasn't short, but
No,
it
that
is.
was pretty short.
That was great.
Yeah, it is straightforward. Yep,
Yep. No, that's good. There's a lot of myths out there.
you're telling me.
Not just the old, we ate all the Moriori myths. Like, there's a lot of myths that kind of come around te tiriti. What are your favourite ones?
Well, do you mean my
Your
most
debunked
unliked
favourite.
favourite?
Yeah.
My most unfavourites. There's heaps. Well, particularly with regards to today, of course, this is just my most unfavourite today, is the idea that tino rangatiratanga is only about property. And this has been an ongoing myth in our history that's just then recently been revived. And it's not new, this revival, it's just I haven't seen it with as much force. This was And of course, we're talking about the Act principles, eh?
Yes.
Yep, they are very similar to the 1989 ones that were put up by the Crown, which was a different government. At the time, that was the same thing, the idea that tino rangatiratanga is self-management of our properties and assets. But the one today, tino rangatiratanga, again, the focus on properties, and that is not what tino rangatiratanga is. That might include that in terms of, again, our right to protect and practice kaitiakitanga when it comes to, our taonga, be that rivers, be that mountains, be that sacred spaces, be that medicines, or then things such as our mātauranga, our reo, our philosophies, our spiritual practices, all of those things, It's not just the focus on properties, it would include that, but tino rangatiratanga is independence. That is our right to, make decisions over our own lives, to determine our own fate. And so this current attempt to make it once again just about assets, that is the Pākehā framing, that's a colonial framing that seeks to, colonise the way that we view our lives and particularly diminish our rights to self-determination. The only thing as well I will add here, though, that's even worse about the one that has come out recently from the ACT Party is that how it differs from the 1989 principles is that it doesn't only diminish it to just properties, but it takes it away from Māori. They're saying that, and actually that rangatiratanga isn't just a Māori right, that's the right of all New Zealanders. And what they're trying to do there, is then once again invisibilise Māori as the indigenous peoples of Aotearoa, by saying, no, that actually this right belongs to everyone. That's a colonising process, it's an assimilation process, but also it really does continue that entire settler colonial theme of genocide in terms of, and so, because if you think genocide is about elimination of the native, is the way Patrick Wolf put it, getting rid of who we are in this attempt, to just make us all the same and say, oh no, rangatiratanga actually belongs to everyone, is just an ongoing part of that. And again, not the first one to do it. We had old Uncle Trevor, Mallard back in the days of the foreshore and seabed turn around and go, oh, everyone's Indigenous now. And just a little history reminder back then, this is all foreshore and seabed time, but particularly with regards to the status of Māori, we have Don Brash's Orewa speech, Orewa disaster, we call it. And then we had the government of the day going, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. You've taken about us back, 20 years. Next minute, what they didn't anticipate was the huge support that they had from right across Aotearoa. And why is that? Oh, well, hello. Are we yet to teach Aotearoa histories in schools? No. So all these people who were like, oh, yes, came out in support of that. And so then the government started the race-based funding inquiry, which then led to the race-based funding cuts. So that was 32 million overnight like that in terms of, it was specifically initiatives in education and health. But what also happened at that same time was that Trevor Mallard was appointed, race relations person and turned around and made this ridiculous speech where he goes, oh no, we're all Indigenous now. I'm from Porirua. This is a thing that's a constant, blight upon progress here in Aotearoa towards greater harmony, which will only be based on greater justice, is this whole idea that it's the assimilation or us all being one, and that us all being the same, that's what's going to create harmony for us. And of course that's not right, because that's a huge injustice. It's about ongoing suppression of Māori, and that Māori, you must fit into this box. And so really we just have that same thing, except now, and this is at whānau too, and this is the main thing to remember, is that people, how they're trying to, not how they're trying to trick us whānau, but the thing is that how it's changed today is that we know that 20 years ago, what people are arguing for is the relevance of te tiriti. Like, no, te tiriti is relevant. No, it's important. And that's what people were debating back then. What's happened now, though, and this is where we see the shift, is that they go, oh, no, te tiriti is relevant and it is important, okay? So that's the first thing to know, is that they're not turning around and saying it's not relevant. They're saying it is. Te tiriti is relevant, but they're saying, but this is how it's relevant, is within this little space. And this is how we're, And so that's what's to watch out for, is don't be fooled by this whole notion of, oh, no, yes, I support te tiriti because then this is what you see. You see, oh, yeah, I support te tiriti, and rangatiratanga is not a Māori right that belongs to everyone. So it's really this way to try, manipulate and contort what's in te tiriti just to suit, their particular political agenda, which is a free market capitalist neoliberal paradigm. Okay, and I've just got one more point on that because I
Go.
can see you trying to ask me another question.
No, good.
So this is the other thing, whānau, okay? That's with regards to the principles bill that's been put forward by ACT. If you haven't read it, please go online because we need you to do so because we need all in Aotearoa to be informed and ready to comment on it. But that's one half of the coalition agreement. As you know, and the other half of the coalition agreement is with New Zealand First, National New Zealand First. And what they're saying here is, oh, well, what we're going to do, on the other hand, which is a complete opposite of what they've agreed to do with the ACT. So I don't see how possibly we're doing the same things. But, on the ACT side, it's the redefining. But then on this side, what it is we're going to take all references to Te Tiriti out of legislation and we're going to replace it with statements on exactly how it is relevant. And so I've had some people come to me and go, oh, no, but that's a good development, isn't it, Veronica? Because, the principles are wishy-washy, et cetera, And the thing is that, whānau, it's like, oh, yes, except once again, you only have to look into the New Zealand First, approach to how much Te Tiriti is or is not relevant, to be able to see, well, no, this isn't about empowering Te Tiriti from the shackles of principles. This is, again, about restraining it. And so, whānau, if you want to know, go and have a look. It's the 2006 Treaty of Waitangi Principles Deletion Bill. This was put forward by New Zealand First all the way back then. So this is like a 2-decade kaupapa. Yeah. Go and have a look, and even if you just read the introduction to that bill or the legislation, it literally uses terms such as treaty gravy train.
Yeah.
So all of you that don't, thinking, oh no, it might be a good idea. Look, they're just trying to do this. No. Just go back and have a look. Doug Wollerton, okay, is the one, and that will give you an insight into what their views are as to what Te Tiriti is relevant. Or even if that sounds like too much homework, whānau, just think settlements. This is the only way that the government sees the relevance of. And they keep on saying that over, like, oh, no, but it won't affect settlements. But it's because that's it. But even that, whānau, settlements say is not justice. That's not Te Tiriti justice. That's about settling our history so that we can carry on.
Let's look at some of the kōrero from this Act's whakaaro on articles. I'm just going to read them out for our viewers and people listening. So, Article 1, kawanatanga o rātou whenua. The New Zealand government has the right to govern all New Zealanders. Article 2, ki ngā tangata katoa o Nutirani, te tino rangatiratanga o rātou whenua, o rātou kāinga me o rātou taonga katoa. The New Zealand government will honour all the New Zealanders in the chieftainship of their land and all their property. Article 3, a rātou ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi. All New Zealanders are equal under law with the same rights and duties. This one's the zinger. The treaty bill will restore mana to our founding document by ensuring it delivers what the original promised in 1840. Yes, ngā tikanga katoa rite tahi. The same rights and duties for all New Zealanders. These people have no understanding of our world, but they love to have a little chop it. What are your whakaaro on just breaking a little bit of that down?
First and foremost, I highly doubt whatsoever that it's going to be the ACT Party that restores mana to anything. And it's rather, absolute desecration of the use of our terms like that in terms of their depth with regards to spiritual, political integrity, but that's a great example of the appropriation of Māori society, and it is part of their ongoing process of colonialism, whānau, in terms of that, when we first had that mass immigration, the time that Māori became a minority, and then the settler parliament are discussing, this is 1860s, what the role of Māori is going to be. It's really clear, okay, whānau, that in a settler colony where Māori have become a minority, the whole idea is that, right, Māori, so what is going to be your role? And that is to give. We're to give our land. We were then to give our labour, and now what we're meant to give is our culture. And so it's the appropriation in terms of that those terms can just be taken and used by anyone willy-nilly or in a way that is actually to deliberately take away our political power, which is inherent in that term, mana. Yeah, it's a disgrace. Whoever put that in there. As you all know, the criticisms with regards to the bill is that, one, it's meant to be a treaty principles bill, but it does appear to have nothing to do with te tiriti itself. That's the advice that came from its own Ministry of Justice, that we all saw with regards to that, the leaked letter on there. But that's exactly right. But one thing, it's not just the content of those as well, though, whānau. Like, this isn't the first attempt to, rewrite, our tiriti. I mean, it is incredibly bad, don't get me wrong, because of how it is trying to diminish the status of Māori and basically make us invisible as Indigenous peoples. Because tino rangatiratanga is a Māori right, okay? Rangatiratanga is something that we were already practicing, already had, based on things like mana. This was just a guarantee of that recognition as a part of that relationship that we had been having with Britain, I'll tell you what, in many senses, whānau, all these people that are attempting to, rewrite and diminish, te tiriti o Waitangi, their days are over. It's not going to last, because the thing is that we have such a huge, enormous evidence base before us now, where they just, they would be rejecting all of that. And the thing is that New Zealanders, going to find it. Well, half of it's online. The Waitangi Tribunal has done amazing work over the past 40 years, but it's things like this. To say that tino rangatiratanga, is a right that belongs to everyone, it's just about property, and that actually it wasn't about Māori. That's not true, or that it was something new that was in te tiriti. So, for example, one of the things that we teach people, is that actually, it wasn't the giving of this right, but just an acknowledgement of something. So we know that our first official visits to sovereigns in Britain was in 1828. And this is... you fellas up north, these tautoko ones, so we know it was Hongi Hika and Waikato. They go to see King George. They've been taken by Thomas Kendall, the missionary, who's acting as interpreter, etc. And so they rock up to go and see old King George, and how does he welcome them? Welcome King Hongi. Welcome King Waikato. We then form a relationship with William, who's his tainer, when we write with regards to what happened to the Elizabeth, etc., that's when they send over Busby, then gets to Victoria. So all of those things are just a continuation, of what we have that is about Māori sovereignty, recognising that we're on that same level, This is the other thing also as well, just to correct with regards to kāwanatanga whānau, is that it's because of things like that, being meted by King George and, him acknowledging us as such, is that we know that kāwanatanga is not over everyone. It's not only that kāwanatanga is meant to be just over British subjects only, but it's also that is just a natural part of it, because we are not on that level. We have been greeted at that level of the sovereign, and heaps of other stories like that. These are just some examples. Is that all these myths, whānau, in our history have been about those two things: reducing our Māori ancestors to noble savages and elevating our Pākehā ancestors to white saviours, and everything then in our history in terms of the evidence that's been taught in schools, or not taught in schools or made available, has just been framed to suit that narrative. And that is about the deep, guilt and anxiety that non-Māori then have about how it is that our Pākehā ancestors made Aotearoa home. Because the truth is, and this is what Mona used to always talk about, Mona Jackson, he used to always talk about, the fact is that, great violence has to be committed in that process of colonisation. You're basically saying it is okay to kill a people. It is okay to absolutely dispossess them of their lands. It's okay to make them homeless, all that, based on this idea that you have a greater right to all those things because you are white. And so these are the really, really ugly aspects of our past, because they are about white supremacy. They are about the notion of our Indigenous ancestors, being inherently inferior, because we've got a bit of pigment. It's the most ridiculous idea under the sun, but there has been massive human rights atrocities, committed all throughout our history based on that idea. And of course, here in Aotearoa, where it's like, oh no, we're all equal and we all get the same chances. Those ideas are abhorrent to most of the population. And so we have invested, you know, over 100 years in ensuring that that basis upon which Aotearoa was actually colonised is completely hidden. And that instead it was, oh, look, we're going to go save the natives, you know, and Māori, you should, you know, don't you feel so happy and lucky about that and grateful, you know, and this is the whole thing, whānau, and you'll see that happen a million ways, you know, like with regards to the Australians. Because what do they say about our Aboriginal whanaunga over there? Oh, look, man, they got it real bad. So Māori, aren't you so lucky, and therefore you should be
happy, therefore.
Happy and grateful, and therefore you definitely shouldn't be complaining. Now, this is what Foucault calls political utility, okay? It's the ideas, what is the political usefulness of an idea? And the political usefulness of that whole, you know, we have the best race relations in the world, and look what happened in other places, oh my God, you know, Māori, aren't we so lucky? Well, of course, anyone, you know, who doesn't have that consciousness of that long history will go, oh yeah, we are so lucky, far out, and therefore will shut up. And that's exactly what successive governments forever have wanted us to do. And in fact, the very quote that was used when we were given the, you know, the Māori seats in Parliament, the Māori representative seats, if you go back and actually read the parliamentary debates, whānau, they say to direct the minds of the natives in the proper channel. You know, this isn't about, oh yes, you know, we should really be giving Māori equal voting rights. You know, well, for one, if that was the case, it would have been 15, 16 seats, not 4, and not 4 for the however blimmin' long it was, well over 100 years. You know, all of that type of thing. And so this is the thing, whānau, is that, you know, just know that all the evidence that has been available to us to date, you know, has really been construed and so in this way so that colonialism can continue, because this is the other thing when people talk about post-colonial, etc., etc. You know, our mentors always said, oh, what, has it stopped? Has colonisation stopped? Oh, I didn't know, you know, when was the party? You know, and that's because, hello, it hasn't, you know, and all of these things continue to carry it on, and that's why this bill and all those other things, whether it's the removing of te reo from ministries, you know, whether it's the removing of the 7AA, you know, with regards to our tamariki, the removal of the Māori wards, they're all the same. That's all the same kaupapa in terms of that it's assimilation, it's no Māori, you're not going to have a space to actually be Māori. You need to come back in amongst the rest of us, and that is colonising. That is about continuing colonisation in terms of making sure that this is a settler colony where, you know, Māori we might be a feature, you know, we might be an interesting, exotic, fetishised feature in terms of, you know, that last thing that we need to give is our culture. You know,
I just want to jump in here and throw a couple pātai, because you've given us a really good breakdown of some of the historical context, you know, since pre-Te Tiriti up until now. I just wanted to ask you about the stats. You said we've got the most raraunga, or the most data, the most evidence, and overwhelming truth on our side. But what we're seeing, especially in the last, you know, decade, people are like climate deniers and just denying evidence. Like this government's denying evidence. So what's good about the evidence? How can we use it more to our advantage if they're just going to deny it? Because that's what they're doing. They're just lying, aren't they?
That's right, bro, because this is actually their evidence. That's one way how you use it against them. So, for example, a lot of the stuff, you know, I'm part of a network called Te Atakura Educators, you know, and the evidence that we use is all primary sources, So in terms of, we haven't read it where other people have written about it. Of course, some of our kaupapa are like that, but, you know, you can go actually directly to the source. And so one of those sources is what they call parliamentary debates, And so parliamentary debates, whānau, these are the old school Hansard. So they call them Hansard today. That's a record of everything that's ever been said, you know, in Parliament. So if you want to listen to some of the gangster stuff that Takuta Ferris has ever said, you know, just go back into Hansard and have a look. And the main thing, and we can access those ourselves, right? So, for example, I could show you some on my laptop right now that I've downloaded. So one of the myths, as you know, is the idea that we have the best race relations in the world, you know, the idea that Māori should be grateful, etc., etc. But going alongside that myth is the idea that all of our conflict that then occurred in this country has to do with differences between the texts. I don't know how it's developed, but this myth has developed that, oh yeah, you know, there were just differences in the text and then everything sort of got stuffed up. Bro, that's crap. You know, all of those things. And so that myth there, whānau, has really, you know, this is what has held us back massively, because it has stopped us from actually being able to see and acknowledge in full why those actual conflicts happened. And this is what I mean. So it's got nothing to do with the differences in the text. Why all the conflict happened is because we have a settler parliament that is set up in the early 1850s who are full on white supremacist ideas. And so in that evidence, Makazi, you know, if you have a look, why it's so important, you know, that people get shocked at whānau, but, you know, it's out there. You just have to go and have a look at it, is where they are discussing, you know, can we just exterminate Māori? And that's the term that they use, exterminate.
Is that the 1867?
1867 Native Schools Act, my bro, and the Māori Representation Act. So it's when they're discussing those things. And what they say is they get like all noble savagey, you know, but the issue that they've come up with, they do. In terms of romantic, like they go like this, oh, you know, because the problem with Māori is that Māori do not fear death. That we will continue to fight, you know, that they said we can try and, you know, crush us, all that type of thing, but actually nothing can be done like that. So that's why they say, so this is the only options before us, the Native Schools Act. Amongst all the Schools Act, that's the one that then bans te reo. You know, and look into these whānau, because how it bans te reo, it doesn't say you can't speak te reo Māori, but it says, you know, the language of instruction will be English, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how it bans it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that act, but it's around those times that it's discussing it. So that's the 1860s, you know, that's what it is, you know, and it's things like social Darwinism becomes popular in the 1870s. That's what we talk about, this whole notion of survival of the fittest. In the 1880s, I read this just the other day. In the 1880s, they're then still talking like this, and this was with regards to the Māori Land Court. So anyone that, you know, we all know how bad the Māori Land Court is, but if you want to know literally how bad it was in those early years when it was operating, you know, just go back and have a look at the parliamentary debates. That Pākehā Professor of Law is also very good, David Williams, his book, Te Kōti Tango Whenua. I know, literally the Māori Land Stealing Court is the name of his book, yeah. But, you know, we read a quote the other day, this is from the 1880s, where there's a MP who's talking about what a fabulous idea the Māori Land Court is. And this is literally what he says. He calls it ingenious, because he goes, oh, you know, the Māori have to come into town. They have to come into town. As per Professor Williams' book, a Māori Land Court case could take anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. You know, this is about the individualisation of our title. And what this MP is saying is that, you know, it's so great because Māori have to go into the cities and then they catch our diseases and die. It's an excellent tool to ensure that we, you know, that the Māori race will die out.
Are we using this information to educate our own people, to educate Māori, to then gain awareness and shift them towards a more proactive Māori state? Or are we using this to paint a picture that we can then present to the next kāwanatanga, or, you know, how te...
This is about... current kāwanatanga... Current kāwanatanga, brother, I'm not sure, but, you know, for our... You know, and this is Mātike mai, you know, this is Toitu Te Tiriti, this is... You know, all of those things with regards to conscientisation is that alongside any, you know, political action, activism, etc., is that there must be a massive, massive education campaign, you know, and this is Paulo Freire's idea of conscientisation, that actually, you know, you can't just have action without being informed, but if you're just informed, then that's nothing either, because that's you being informed just sitting in your house, you know, that those things go hand in hand. And the thing is that, so this is really with regards to, you know, the conscientisation aspect in terms of their education, and that all New Zealanders know, hey, you know, this fantasy that we've been brought up with in terms of that we're the best place, and so, you know, we should be so grateful that we're not like Australia, and so sit down and shut up. Well, actually, that's not true. You know, that's not true, is that we were discussing things like, you know, genocide, and these were the particular ways that we then addressed it. And so it's not that those bad things haven't happened here, they have, you know, and that we need to be fully aware of our history to then be able to go back, and also all our efforts to be able to reverse all that today, because that type of kōrero is part of, you know, the continuum of what's continually happening to Māori. Because assimilation, my bro, is just another approach, but it's the same whakaaro. Māori, it is not good for you to be Māori. You know, that's an inferior way of living. We just need to come back and be, you know, just all get in and be together, mainstream, which is white stream. You know, white stream. So it's also seen how all those things link us back to that original whakaaro. So I would say that this is for all New Zealanders. All Māori, of course, you know, lots and lots of Māori, of course, already know, but we know that there's some that don't, you know, and internalized colonialism is a thing, you know, or, you know, self-hate is a thing. Where you don't have faith in yourself, that's a thing. And this is one of the worst things, you know, that colonization has done to us, you know, in terms of where there are Māori that go, oh no, Ronnie, but we are lucky, you know, because look at how bad that was, you know, and we should be grateful, you know. And so trying to gently say to people, yeah, but do you know, and this is how things like the Māori seats get attached to that. Oh, look, they gave us a seat in Parliament because they wanted to give us an equal voice. And it's like, bro, it wasn't that. You know, they had decided that they couldn't exterminate us. And it does have to do with not being able to afford it, okay? But the thing is that, you know, it's not just how bad it was, but it's like, my God, and then Māori did this, and then they tried this, you know, and then, oh, look, and then they went and did that over here. You know, and these people didn't agree with that, but they went and did this thing over here. And so it's all the different ways that we have tried to, you know, resist colonisation, exercise tino rangatiratanga, continue our progress and development as human beings on the blimmin' face of the earth, just because we have the right to do so as, you know, as human beings. And then it's from there, my kazi, that people go, and what are we going to do?
Oh, so what are we going to do? Well, for starters, whānau, we're going to come back and listen to Koka V. There was so much substance in this kōrero and te hohunu o tēnei kōrero that we have to come back and do part 2 of it. So make sure you come back and see us. Ka kite anō, toi tū te porokate.
Porokate is a podcast by the Hori and te Kuru. Toi tū te porokate, toi tū te reo.